Hey guys, welcome back to another live episode of Michael's Life in Madrid. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Hope you guys are having a great morning. I know I personally had a pretty good morning. I feel like my Spanish classes are getting a little better each day, so progress but slow. And I hope you guys are having a wonderful morning. I'm sorry I missed you guys last week. One of the pros and cons of being an English teacher is occasionally other teachers get sick, which is unfortunate for them, but it means that you can sub in and get more experience, pick up a little extra cash, and it's a really nice sort of community building thing. We've had one teacher who's been a little sick recently, and so we've all been picking up some of her classes, and that's why I wasn't able to be with you. I was really disappointed because I was planning on talking about Halloween, which is one of my favorite holidays, and I think a really interesting topic for living abroad. But no fear, today I'm going to be discussing another very interesting and I think important topic, and that is grocery shopping abroad. So when you move or even just travel abroad, there are certain everyday tasks that become a little bit more opaque, and by that I mean not as straightforward, less easy. And, I say this because it's really surprising the small things that become difficult or unusual when you're living in a foreign country. And as someone who studied Spanish in high school, I had this expectation that I would move here and I would take some Spanish classes and I would speak with the locals and everything would just rush back to me in a flood. Not that I was ever especially fluent. And while a lot of things have been coming back pretty quickly, there are still some basic things that I struggle with, and one of those is grocery shopping. And to be entirely honest, even after living in Madrid for, I guess it's 2.5 months now, I still don't have it entirely figured out. There are still things that I struggle to find or that I have questions about where to find, and it's a process, but I feel like I've come a long way since August, where it took me like an hour and a half just to get the basic like eggs, milk, those types of things. And while I'm still figuring things out, I wanted to share with you guys what I've learned so far. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the different options that are available. Not all of them, just the ones that I have experience with or know people have experience with. There are so many places to grocery shop in Madrid that to do a comprehensive list would be like probably impossible in this video. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the ones that I've been to or the ones that I know about, and a little bit about things like pricing and some of the surprises that come along with grocery shopping in Madrid. A lot of the stores I'll be talking about are ones that are in my neighborhood. As I mentioned in an earlier video, I live in between Malasaña and Chueca, which is pretty center to the center of Madrid. So there are a lot of big name players in here, big chains, and as well as some smaller stores. And I'll be talking about stores that are within what I consider walking distance, which is anywhere between 5 and 30 minutes. So I call that walking distance because I consider that if it's just as easy or easier to walk than to take public transportation. So I'm going to start off with a really big name player, Carrefour. I hope I'm saying these right. I'm pretty sure I'm saying them right. This is a French company that I think had its origins around the 50s or 60s, 1950s or 60s, and is, in the words of my roommate, the Spanish Walmart. There's sort of this stereotype in Spain, from what I can understand, that, quote unquote, the French know what they're doing when it comes to food. And when I sort of prodded that a little bit more, what it essentially comes out to is, one, the idea that the French are very good at cooking, but also that this store in particular has a really good balance between quality products and price. So it's sort of like a happy medium, in my opinion, of two of the most important factors. So I've got a Carrefour very close to my home. I think it's maybe 15 minutes walk. And there's also a Carrefour Express around the corner, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about Express stores later in the video. Another big player is El Campo, which is another French company that is in competition with Carrefour. They advertise as being cheaper than Carrefour, and a lot of times you'll find El Campo brands in smaller shops on the street. They're called chinos by a lot of people. I tend to lean towards Chinese shop. So those products do tend to be just a little bit cheaper, or at least of the same price range. Another big one is Mercadona. Now this one is a Spanish company that was started in, I believe, in Valencia, and it, because of its backstory of having been started by a man, like a family man, like a farmer with a lot of kids, from what I understand. It has a really good reputation among Spanish people as being not only a good option in terms of like the variety of food and the price, but also just being like, you know, sort of this local, almost like family store, even though it is like, it's a big grocery store. Yeah, so this is where I actually do a lot of my shopping. One, because it's close, and one, because it is a lot cheaper than some of the options I first encountered when I came here. The average amount that I spend per week, for anyone who's wondering, is around 25 to 30 euro, which averages between 35 and 40 US dollars. And I eat a lot of vegetables. The vegetables here are really cheap. Eggs, some chicken, and then every so often I make sort of the more quote-unquote extravagant or less normal kind of meal. Like last night I made sweet potato black bean burgers with a quinoa binder. So there are things like that available, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about the types of foods that are normal and less normal a little later in the video. Another big player is El Dia, which there's some debate as to whether or not Mercadona is cheaper than El Dia, but sort of the basic consensus is that it's the cheapest option, but it's the most basic with sort of the least variety. And it's not really going to differ from store to store, and the range of things you'll find is a little less extensive. Back where I'm from in the States, another popular chain, or one that's starting to gain momentum, is Aldi and Lidl, which are German grocery stores. I personally loved these stores when I was back in the States. There was one a few blocks from my house, and that's actually where I did a lot of my shopping when I first arrived. Back in August, there was an Aldi close to my home, or close to my Airbnb in Argüelles, which is where I was staying. But the Aldi and Lidl, they're a little less, there aren't as many stores. And so I don't go there as often because they're out of what I consider walking distance. And the thought of like hauling all of my groceries on to the metro just gives me like, I have like a physical reaction of dread. No, like there's no way I would ever bring my groceries on the metro. Unless, you know, it was something, really close, maybe like 2 metro stops away. They are generally, these two stores, Aldi and Lidl, are about on par with the price of El Dia, but I tend to personally appreciate their quality more. So some of the big players, in addition to stores like Carrefour, would be El Corte Inglés, which is a huge chain store. To me, this seems more like Walmart because the grocery store is actually on the bottom of the store usually, and then it's sort of like several layers. There's several floors, and there's things like sports goods and clothing and perfumes. It feels a little bit more mall to me in some ways. People will generally go to El Corte Inglés because they know the quality is going to be really good, and therefore the price is going to be high. Higher at least. One of the perks though is they tend to have some things that are maybe like a little less easy to find. I actually found like my shampoo there, herbal essences, where you would think, oh, like herbal essences, whatever, it's like a normal brand. Here I found that their stores will carry Dove and Pantene and Garnier and everything except for herbal essences. Those I found in El Corte Inglés and like small, again, the Chinese shops on the street. It's like you find some things in the weirdest places. Another more expensive option, and one that I tend to avoid just because I don't find it, very special in what they offer, is Supercore, which there's one close to my house as well. I did a lot of my shopping there when I first moved to my apartment. But again, it's like you can find everything else that they have in Carrefour, Mercadona, and you don't have to pay that much for it. So people may be excited to hear that Costco does exist here. I know of one store. It's too far away for me to travel on the metro, and by too far away I mean like, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes, but just the idea of trying to like buy in bulk but then like haul it all back to my house really doesn't appeal to me. But it does exist, so as far as I know, there's no reason you couldn't go in on a membership with some friends when you get here, if you know Costco is kind of your special place when you go shopping. I know a lot of people back where I'm from would shop exclusively at Costco, so thought I would let you guys know that it does exist. And finally, of the stores I'm going to talk about today, this is two parts. There are some smaller street stores, sort of like mini supermarkets that are more independently owned, and the expresses. Stores like Dia and Carrefour will have express stops. There's one, as I mentioned, around the corner from where I live, less than a 5-minute walk. These things are good for some basics. You know, they have like a really small produce and fruit selection, some refrigerated stuff like sliced meats and cheeses, really overpriced yogurt if you're a yogurt fan, milk, beer, really basic stuff like that. They will be a little bit higher priced than the regular store, like a larger Dia or Carrefour. Generally not by much though. For example, I think in regular stores like almond milk might be like €1.50, and at the Carrefour Express it's like €2. So it's, you know, it's a little bit more expensive if you're on a budget, but it's good for quick stops if it's like you just need a carton of milk. And then there are some of the actual like specialty stores like butchers and bakers and things where you have a better chance of getting the really quality meats and stuff like without the preservatives that you're going to find in a grocery store. And there are tons of markets around the city, some really popular ones that could honestly have their own video. So that's all I'm going to talk about in terms of the different stores that you can go to, or different stores I have been to personally. A few notes that I thought were worth sharing is that places like El Campo, Carrefour, Dia, they have their own brands similar to like Kroger, Price Chopper brands, depending on where you're from in the States, which will be cheaper, but also lower quality, really basic. Milk comes in non-refrigerated, smaller cartons than back in the States. This was a really kind of strange adjustment for me to buy milk that was just sitting on a shelf. But I guess they must have some kind of preservative that makes that okay. To purchase your produce, this was a little bit strange to me. There are these special plastic gloves you take out of a dispenser, and you have to bag everything yourself, and then there's a machine next to the station where you weigh everything, which is similar in the States. You can like weigh, how much you're going to pay, but then you click on like an icon for that food and it prints out a sticker with a barcode, and you put it on the bag so that at the checkout line they just swipe it and the price comes up and they don't have to like do anything, which that was, the first time that I used that machine, I think I stood there for a full 30 seconds, and this like old woman actually kind of like looked at me and like slipped in front of me because she could tell I was confused and was like, I'm busy, I gotta bag my groceries. And I was like, okay. So it's really actually very intuitive once you use it, but it kind of threw me for a loop the first time. At the register, the cashier will always ask you if you want a bolsa. I still have problems with Spanish S's, which is the word for a bag. So it took me like 5 times going to the grocery store to realize what they were asking when they said bolsa, which now, if you don't speak a lot of Spanish, you at least know that word. And when you go to the grocery store, you'll be able to say, sí or no. Because I'm still in the habit of bringing my own bag, which is what I did back in the States. I had like a couple big reusable plastic bags, which people still do here, but that's a lot easier when you drive a car and you can just like pile all your groceries in the back and take a few trips to your apartment unloading. Here I walk, and so like when you go grocery shopping, you're very conscious, or you become very conscious very quickly of the amount you can carry. The alternative to that there actually are these these things my friends and I call grandma carts, which are these little trolleys you can pull around behind you. And a lot of old people carry them, but they're not actually only for old people. But they're sort of like a little bit bigger than a backpack. Or actually, they could be a lot bigger than a backpack depending on what size backpack you have. But you can carry usually like 2 or 3 American-sized grocery bags worth of food in them, and they roll along behind you, so you don't have to worry about how heavy things are, or like putting them on your back or on your shoulders. You can get these at any of the Chinese shops, or most of the Chinese shops, for like between 10 and 20 euro. This is something I want to do, but I just still so far am in the habit of the plastic bag and also not spending money. But I definitely recommend that after having spent 2 months carrying groceries in my backpack. So in terms of the foods that are here, this was a big question for me and something I kind of struggled with a little bit when I first arrived. A lot of the basics, again, milk, eggs, cheese, whatever, obviously they're going to have these things. Some of a little bit stranger things is they will have, entire aisles or half aisles dedicated to different brands of olives. But then some places won't carry sweet potatoes. I found sweet potatoes in this little street shop next to TtMadrid, but I wouldn't find them in Mercadona. At least not the one that I go to. I am assured by my roommates that Mercadona carries them somewhere. I have not seen this yet. Other things that were less common, but I found after poking around, canned black beans and peanut butter. I don't know. It was like this in Italy as well. Black beans just aren't a part of the Spanish diet, and so they aren't really as easy to find in grocery stores. Some restaurants cook with them, but they're not a super typical thing I found to find in stores. And that's sort of, when it comes to beans in general, oftentimes they're dry and you have to cook them yourselves. The whole canned, already cooked beans thing is not so normal. And actually last night when I was cooking with black beans, I found canned black beans also in the same store as sweet potatoes. But it says in Spanish soup on the cover because it comes in the liquid. And my roommates were like, black bean soup? Is it pre-made black bean soup? And I was like, no, it's just black beans. They're just already cooked. So that was a strange one. And then peanut butter is really similar. Spanish people and Italian people, they don't really cook with peanut butter. Cook with peanut butter, they just don't have a use for it in their recipes. And so I've met people who literally have never eaten peanut butter. A lot of stores will carry it in very small jars, really tiny jars for 4 euros. So, you got to weigh out if that's worth the splurge for you. For me personally, it is. I will pay 4 euros for a jar of peanut butter because I am that person. For vegan and vegetarian people, there are not really sections for that here in big stores the way there are back in America. Every so often you will find a bio section which has healthier foods, but from what I have observed and what I've heard from the few vegans I know here, you still have to go to very specific shops if you have those kinds of dietary needs. And they do exist. I'm told that in La Latina, there actually are a lot of stores that have, vegan options. So they do exist, but they're not so popular in big brand chain stores that are going to be cheaper. And then there are some things that are surprisingly common on the other end of the spectrum. For example, American candies. You can walk into most Chinese shops on the store and find Oreos, Twix, Snickers, all of these really basic candies. And sometimes things like Pringles and Arizona green tea, although that's a little bit less common. There's a store near my house, again, in the center that carries them, but it's 7 euro. So yeah, again, weigh out the cost of splurging. But if you are looking for those special tastes of home, there are 2 stores that I know of that do carry a lot of these American products. Or if you're from, from England, there's a place called Deals, and then there's Taste of America, and they will carry the brands like Arizona Tea, peanut butter, but Jif peanut butter, the really American brands. But again, they are a lot more expensive, 50% increase in price. So I personally haven't actually bought anything from these stores yet. I know people who have, and it's like, kind of that treat yourself mentality. So to kind of wrap things up, what it really comes down to, grocery shopping here, is cost, convenience, quality, and just familiarizing yourself with the stores near your place. The layouts are like slightly different. They were different for me compared to where I was shopping in the States. So you just need to take your time and explore your store a little bit. I find it really helpful to translate my grocery list into Spanish so that I can, ask for help in the store. And even if you don't speak Spanish very well, you can at least show them the word. And through miming, the power of gesture is a powerful thing. So that would be like one of my biggest tips, is just explore your market and, have a list in Spanish.